open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And good morning and welcome to Kentucky's Voice. We are so pleased to have you join us this morning. Really excited about today's show. And I'm not going to give away who our guests are right now, but I will tell you my special guest host who's joining me right now is Dr. Gary French. Welcome to the program, Gary.
Thanks, Bob. Because you hear that click, so many people tuning out as soon as you said my name.
Well, I don't think that's happening. You're, as our listeners know, you're well received with our program. You've actually hosted shows for us many times, and yeah, it is an honor to have you on. We are living in interesting times. I think everybody in our listening audience would agree to that, and just wanted to get your thoughts about that, and especially segue into our special guest who is going to be on the program today. We're very honored to have him on.
You know, Bob, you're always so honoring to me when we speak, and I greatly appreciate that. My whole life is not about me. It's not about our government. When people say that I am a conservative, I always let them know I am a Christian conservative. I think that's important to distinguish. My life is about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with everyone, everywhere I go. For many years, I had a pulpit ministry. I don't have that any longer. I actually miss that on some days, but there's a lot of times that I'm just excited to be able to share that Jesus Christ is the answer. Last week, when we spoke with Daniel Cameron, he indicated that the issues before us is a spiritual battle. And I agree with that. And like with our guest today, I think we can agree with him that it's not a left or right issue. Naysayers will say it's a left or right issue, meaning Democrat or Republican, when it's really an American issue that we're facing today. And it is an up or down, as far as my perspective is concerned, heaven or hell, God's blessings or no blessings. And I think that those that are watching or listening to the program today will ascertain that as we get into some particulars about why this man should represent us, why this man should serve us, because, friends, that's exactly what he's seeking to do. He's not in this to build his name or build his reputation. He's already done that. And I think you'll hear his own voice as he talks about the greatest reputation that he has, or the greatest legacy that he has, is his children and his grandchildren. Solomon said, our life is but a vapor. We're here and then we're gone. And truly that's the case. I've known this gentleman for many years, and he's one I would call a dear friend. I remember when, as people like to say, and he's like if I can use this analogy or comparison, he's like a zebra. His stripes don't change, and he's going to remain faithful in the office. He's going to remain faithful to the people in Kentucky. He's going to remain faithful, first of all, to his wife and to his children. And any naysayers that come along, I would stand shoulder to shoulder with this man, my brother, and say, I would disagree with you. This is a fine, outstanding patriot.
And well said, Gary. I do want to invite folks to text, and I know there's going to be many of you that might want to text a comment or a thought in. You can do so at our number, 502-571-0970. Again, that text line number is 502-571-0970. And This morning, I'll say it, we're honored to welcome one of the most independent and outspoken voices in Congress, Congressman Thomas Massie. Welcome to the program, Congressman.
Wow, thanks for having me on. It's great to be on your show. The name of your program is Kentucky's Voice. I try to give Kentucky a voice up here in Washington, D.C. every day. I think we need an independent voice.
Well, I might add that you do a very good job of that. And in fact, folks, stay tuned. We're going to be coming right back with Congressman Thomas Massie. He's going to be sharing some insights that I know you all are going to be very interested in. And if you do want to participate, again, that phone number is 502-571-0970. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. We'll be right back.
Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
So what are your priorities if you are reelected?
The same priorities that I had 12 years ago. That is to defend the Constitution. We swear an oath to that. You know, most Republicans are big fans of the Second Amendment, but I'm also, and I am too, I'm chair of the Second Amendment Caucus. I'm now the co-chair with Lauren Boebert from Colorado. So that's a high priority for me, but I care about all the Constitution. So I'm a big fan of freedom of speech. I think you should be able to say things that are even hateful. I don't think that we should try to regulate speech, whether it's on the internet or on campuses. I'm a big fan of the Fourth Amendment. That's put me at odds with a lot of people in Washington, D.C. recently. The Fourth Amendment's your right to privacy. And it says that you got to have a warrant and probable cause if you want to search somebody's possessions. Yet the U.S. government is doing that with a program called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And so I recently stood up, objected to the reauthorization of it, and said we need to put warrants in here. And so we had a debate. I didn't win the day, but they didn't win the day either. It was merely a 45-day extension. And so we'll continue that debate after that.
And, of course, that's Congressman Thomas Massie from District 4 here in Kentucky. He's right in the middle of, I don't even think it's an argument now, the most contentious primary, certainly the most money that's ever been spent in our state's history on a primary. And, of course, that election is coming up just around the corner. It's next Tuesday, the 19th, and again, Thomas, we're honored to have you on the program today and share your thoughts. I will say that I met you, little story. It's been probably when you were first running, I think, what was that, 14 years ago, something like that?
Yep.
You were brought into my office by another individual, and we had a nice short conversation, and you just told me a little bit about yourself. And you probably don't even remember this, but I remember that I prayed with you and for you when that happened. Just that, because I know what it's like with regard to going into public service, and your head is on the chopping block almost daily, you know. And I just saw something in you when you came in, and I really admired you because you were just common Joe that's also basically a genius, went to MIT for those folks that don't know that, and also an inventor, among other things. But I like the fact, and I love people that are willing to jump in the fray, put themselves on the line with regard to our country and doing what's best for our country and our state. So, again, lots and lots are going on right now, Thomas. And what's your thoughts about, in general, first of all, the amount of money that's been spent with regard to this race? It's crazy.
Well, you know, I grew up in the poorest county in our congressional district, and I try to remain humble here in my service in Washington, D.C., but it is a tremendous honor. I guess that honor and also staying true to my principles. I hope you've observed that since we met many years ago, I'm still the same guy, although I've figured out how to be a little more effective up here, and I've gotten several things done that's raised the ire of, frankly, globalists. This is a race that's being watched by not just by the whole country, but by the whole world. We've had TV cameras from Belgium and Japan
it's insane.
Observing the race and showing up. And, you know, I guess it's flattering when you have $30 million being spent, and most of that's being spent against you. The majority of it's being spent against you. They say if you're taking flack, you're over the target. I must be sitting on the target. I'm not just in the blast radius. I think I'm in the middle, like literally where the bombs are landing.
I've been around politics for a while, and I have never seen anything like this. I mean, it's just – and I will say this a little bit. I live in your district, and I'm going to be not so unhappy to see the flyers that are hitting my mailbox every day, you know, coming in and the negative ads. But Gary, I know you have.
Speaking of that, Bob. Yeah, speaking of that, the negative ads that are out there would paint Thomas Massie as the first cousin to the Antichrist. But here's what I know, and this is all being said, Thomas, to come to a question or questions. And I see this. I know this to be fact. A faithful husband is so much so a faithful husband. When your first wife passed away, I called you, and you were getting ready. You were in the Congress, so in the hall or in the dome, headed over to vote on something. And I prayed with you about that. You were very appreciative of that prayer. And folks, let me tell you, you know, whatever you may think of him, that he's very receptive to prayer. And Thomas, you wept because your heart was broken. I understand that. And you're a loving father, a doting grandfather, as Bob said, an MIT graduate, an inventor. You're a Christian conservative. You're a patriot, a gentleman peach farmer. People didn't know that. And you're so much more. But beyond all that, if you weren't in Congress, I would still call you my friend because I trust you. The gentleman that has been endorsed, and I'm a Trump guy. I believe in supporting Trump, but there's some Trumpisms that he says and uses that I just cringe at sometimes because I think our president and our politicians should be above that freight. Well, here's based on a commercial. The elephant in the room: Save America Act, stop immigrant welfare, fight woke agenda, defend the Second Amendment, protect the unborn, and secure the border. Why would anybody run against you and then they say that you are none of those things when your record shows that you are every one of those things? Your opponent and those who oppose you attempt to paint you in another light. Here's the simple question: why in the world is that?
Well, listen, the biggest problem here in Washington, D.C., in addition to the unbalanced budget, is that they pass these bills that have 1,000 pages. Some of them have 3,000 pages. And everything is in the bill. So whether it was under Barack Obama or Joe Biden or Donald Trump, if you've ever once voted against one of these giant omnibus bills, then that opens you up to the argument that you voted against something that people like, whether it's a pay raise for the soldiers or something like that. But let me tell you what, also when you vote for these giant bills, you're part of the problem. You are now responsible for the $39 trillion of debt. When I got here, the debt, when I was campaigning and first met you, Gary, long ago, the debt was $16 trillion. And then when I was sworn in, it was about 18 or 19 trillion. Well, it's more than doubled since I've been in Congress, but not thanks to me, because I've been voting to cut spending. Now, when the Democrats are in office, it's very popular for Republicans to vote to cut spending. But then when you get a Republican in the White House, you're told, well, no, this is our spending, and so you need to vote for increased spending. That's a problem that I have, and that's what's really got me in trouble more than anything else, is I vote with the party 90% of the time. But in that clip that you aired there from public radio, where I talk about ensuring that you have warrants that the government's going to spy on Americans, there's one of those 10% instances where I don't vote with the party. Another instance would be if there's just spending too much money, then I vote against it. And that's what opens you up to all these claims.
There's all this garbage. They'll present an omnibus bill, and it's like be 1,000 pages for everything. And I long for the days that every bill would be a standalone bill, one page, Amen. Yes or no to all that. But yet you'll see people ram through a bill that's going to say, oh, we're going to give money to help people in Indonesia. We're going to give some money to teach the people in Kenya how to become a woke agenda. We're going to give money to help people understand that the rainbow is not about God's promise, but it's about homosexual agenda. Oh, and then we're going to put a little bit of money here that's going to support the military. And I could go on and on and on.
Right.
And then they frame it in such a way that says, oh, Thomas Massie is against the military. No, you're against frivolous spending, feckless spending.
Absolutely. And, recently we've had one of these single issue bills come up that I have voted for. It funds the Department of Homeland Security, which includes border security and ICE, which is responsible for deporting illegal immigrants. I have voted for that multiple times because it's a standalone bill, and those people need to get paid because if you've broken the law, you need to be held accountable. And so that's what that does. And then recently we had a bill come up in my Judiciary Committee that I was honored to vote for that keeps boys out of women's sports in the Olympics. If we're going to say we should not. Now, I know the Russians may have been doing that for 30 years. They're actually the innovators.
How dare you say that? Yeah.
They're innovators in, Olga from wherever, Russia. Anyways, who has the shoulders of, a male athlete. Anyways, they may do it, but we're not going to do it and condone it. And so I voted for a bill that would prevent that. And I voted for a lot of stuff like that. The SAVE Act, as you pointed out, which would require you to provide photo ID to vote in a federal election. And to get that photo ID, prove that you're American.
Why does that get so much pushback? I mean, that's common sense America right there. Hey, you're a citizen, show an ID, vote.
It is common sense, and it should be easy to vote for. And I voted for it twice in the House, but it's been stalled in the Senate. I think John Thune should bring it up for a vote anyway and make the Democrats, if they're going to obstruct it, make them vote against it and go on the record and show Americans what they're really about.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, I know we'll be taking a break here. Bob, why don't you lead us out?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you are listening to Kentucky's Voice. We are getting some texts in. Feel free to text us at 502-571-0970. We will be back with Congressman Thomas Massie.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm Bob Scott, your host today, joined by my special guest host, Gary French, Dr. Gary French. I'd like to throw that in there as well. He's a lot smarter than I am, folks, that's for sure. And I must say our really special guest, Congressman Thomas Massie. And Congressman, we have gotten some texts in from our text line. Are you prepared to answer? I know, and I do want to make certain, I don't want to get tied up on this too much, but there are several subjects that you're working on right now, very hard, that are very near and dear to my heart personally and important to Kentucky as a whole. But one of the questions that's coming up is, in fact, not one, but there's several. Makes a statement. I'm from Florence, Kentucky. I just want to say thank you for representing us so well, staying true to your beliefs and values, and for not caving to outside interests at the risk of your own career. I will proudly be voting for you. So that's a statement of agreement. And there has been some questions that come up about the Cynthia Clark story. I don't know if you want to go into that right now.
Sure. Love a chance.
But if you just give us a quick answer on that, I think I've done enough research on that. I kind of know the answer.
That's been debunked. All that's been debunked.
Let me tell you where it came from, though. So a guy that I beat in 2012 tried to get a statement from a woman, and he went to the law office of a guy that I beat in 2020, and then a guy that I beat in 2024 put it on social media. So there are 3 people who've lost elections to me tried to manufacture a story about me, and that's probably all you need to know about the motive.
And I've done some research, and I know that's 100% the truth, but I'm glad we're having an opportunity to debunk it right now that's out there. And it's, you see this kind of stuff happen in big elections, especially they call them the October surprises, but I guess we could say this was the attempted May surprise that happened. And again, thank you for answering that particular question.
But let me add in there real quick, if I may, as Bob, that's along the same line of stuff as the terrible AI commercials that we've seen.
Yes,
showing Thomas holding hands with AOC and Ilhan Omar, and you don't even have to be very good at AI to realize that's bad AI.
Right.
But there's going to be some people who have bad vision. Or as Rush Limbaugh used to say, I should put my hand over my heart when I say that, Rush Limbaugh, low information voters that are going to say, Ethel, come look at this. He is going to a hotel. You know what? These people, I need to calm down here. Thomas, these people, a lot of people, I should say, in Washington, D.C., must want to see you defeated so badly. That's why they and your opponent are so negative in their commercials, and you are not.
Right. If you watch my commercials, you can see that we're spending our money here on positive ads, talking about my record of achievement and why I'm running for office. You'll see me talking to the camera, not some surrogate, and we're going positive. And when you see campaigns get desperate and run that ridiculous ad you talked about there, Gary, where it doesn't imply, it shows with artificial intelligence video, which is completely manufactured using computers, that they're trying to say that I went on a date with AOC and Ilhan Omar and checked into a hotel. That shows how absolutely desperate they are. And it shows that I'm going to win this race, I believe. I think it could backfire on them. It does have a disclaimer. Now, you may say, well, why don't you sue them? It has a disclaimer that says it was created with AI. But look, a lot of older voters, that's artificial insemination. That's how you raise cattle in Kentucky. And they're going to be scratching their heads. How did they use artificial insemination to create this video?
Well, a lot of times with some politicians, some circles, there seems to be, and folks, listen to me, don't gripe at me about this, there does seem to be excessive inbreeding, because that's how they seem to come across so many times. Let me get to something, because I know we want to talk real quick, at least about RFK Jr. and all that. And I tell you what,
Gary,
I've been...
Before we go to that, I want to play a quick clip. Mr. Producer, if you would go ahead and play that right now. I appreciate it. It's RFK Jr. clip that he talks about something very near and dear to my heart.
We sued Monsanto. There's many diseases that are linked to glyphosate exposure, including non-alcoholic fatty liver cancers are very closely linked. A lot of kidney diseases, and then severe damage to the microbiome because it's designed to kill plants, and there are structures in your gut biome that are critical structures in your gut biome, which have plant-like metabolisms which are destroyed by glyphosate.
And of course, that's our Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy Jr., talking about the explosion of chronic health conditions happening in our country. And, obviously he has the MAHA movement, which has been stamped and approved by President Trump. They're doing a fantastic job. And I know you're a big part of that as well, and you're trying to do something about it as far as some legislation is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they're trying to give Monsanto Bayer a get-out-of-court-free card here at the federal level. They're trying to say that they don't have to label their products as potentially dangerous. All they have to do is put a warning label, not a danger label, and that the EPA can grant immunity to a company if they get an EPA label, that no state could require additional labels, even if the states know that a product in certain unapproved applications or even approved applications can cause cancer. So glyphosate is one of those herbicides, and that, we know it's poison. Nobody would take a bottle of glyphosate and drink it, all right?
That's right.
But it could have legitimate farming applications, like spraying a fence row to kill the weeds there, or maybe even spraying a field before you plant your plants or after you've planted your plants. But there are applications of glyphosate, which is the generic name for Roundup, that I think we should recognize are not healthy. For instance, spraying ripe wheat so that it will ripen quicker and that they can harvest it quicker and get the next crop in the ground a few days earlier. That's really, I think, at that point, greed. And why would you spray poison on something that's about to be harvested and put into the food chain? Now, listen, I'm not talking about banning it, but what they tried to do recently is they tried to give that get-out-of-court-free card to these manufacturers of all herbicides and pesticides, insecticides in the Farm Bill. A few of us conservatives stood up and forced a vote on getting that taken back out of the Farm Bill, and we were successful in removing that immunity privilege for glyphosate and other pesticides and herbicides.
And thank you, because that is critical. We have a little over a minute and a half to go in this segment. You're unfortunately going to have to leave us because we know your schedule was packed right now. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience right now in the next minute and a half?
Well, I think they're not served well to have a rubber stamp up here. Yes, I agree with the president 90% of the time, and 10% of the time I'm taking up for you all. Oftentimes that puts me at odds with corporations. I just got a bill passed that would revolutionize meat production in Kentucky. Kentucky's the biggest cattle state east of the Mississippi. I got a bill called the Prime Act written into the Farm Bill, which passed the House of Representatives. That would make it much easier for mom and pop shops in Kentucky, and any state for that matter, to take local farmers' livestock, have it processed, and sell it to local consumers. And they wouldn't need to be under this giant USDA regime as long as they're compliant with your local health inspections that inspect, for instance, restaurants. It could be done safely. Anyways, that's in the Farm Bill, and people could buy, instead of having to buy half a cow and get it processed locally, they could buy a steak or a package of hamburger now. And that's really important because the price of everything is going up. And it shouldn't be like, your freezer shouldn't be your 401k. It should, or not as big, shouldn't rival your 401k. So that's a big issue that I got done for Kentucky here in Washington, D.C. just this last week.
And buy a little raw
Well
milk
said.
in the process, too. Anyway, Congressman Thomas Massie, it's been an honor to have you on the program today. We wish you the best. Take care. God bless.
Thank you.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I got to say that segment went way, in fact, both segments with Congressman Massie went way too fast. I mean, we could have easily done a whole show today with him, but he's a busy guy. I think we all know what's going on right now here within our state concerning his re-election bid. And with that in mind, I'm very pleased to bring in, and by the way, I'm Bob Scott, and my special guest host today is Dr. Gary French. Good man, and I'm really excited about our next guest because he's probably the foremost expert in the state with regard to really understanding the lay of the land politically in our state. And I thought it was imperative that we get Richard Nelson on the program today from the Commonwealth Policy Center out of Frankfurt. He is, again, I can't say it enough, the foremost expert, with regard to conservative Christian principles. And Richard, again, welcome back to Kentucky's Voice.
Bob, it's always great to be on the program with you. Thank you for the very kind words as well. As you mentioned, we're in the middle of a very heated political season. And I think we're all, maybe some of us are ready for all this to be passed, especially with some of the ugly advertisements. And I just had somebody literally within the last couple of minutes send me a link to an ugly ad in a congressional race, not the 4th district, but a different district. And the person was just disappointed with the ad. We both know the person, and that can be a little deflating, if you will, for conservative Christians who want to see good candidates and they want to see good leadership. And the negative, the mudslinging, is just doesn't really relate real well to the idea of statesmanship. So many of us are hoping that we get past this and see good people elected nonetheless. So.
What's your overall impressions, Richard, going forward with regard to and I'm not asking you to make a prediction, anything like that, coming up. If you want to, you're more than welcome to. But as far as Tuesday, we know the polls with regard to early voting has opened today, Yeah. And we know that, are you thinking there's going to be any kind of record turnout because of the veracity of the race so far that's led up to this as far as a primary is concerned?
Yeah, I think it's going to probably be similar to the 2022 midterm primary elections, which that was just over 20%. And I think that's about par for the course for a statewide election during a midterm primary. But unfortunately, you can look at this one of two ways. One is, that's only 1 out of 5 voters turning out. On the other side,
who's
for
that
those
going to
who do
benefit
turn out,
if
their
that happens?
their vote
Richard?
means a lot more, right?
Yep.
when they
That's
do
right.
show up. My hope is that we'll see a higher turnout, especially for Christians. Here's the thing. We're blessed with so many freedoms and liberties that it's incumbent upon us to step out and to be willing to preserve our freedoms and liberties. And part of that is by voting, right? And we want to vote for good candidates who represent values that honor God, values that lead to flourishing, values that preserve the freedoms that we have today. Politics is a stewardship. And as Christians, we all know the idea of stewardship, and we need to steward this moment right now. My hope is that Christians will be compelled to get out and to vote. So, Bob, maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe we'll see a great, turnout in this election. I hope I am wrong in that regard.
Hey, Richard, I've got when I for about 10 years, I did a lot of work with the Family Research Council out of Washington, and really enjoyed doing that, and got a chance to meet with a lot of people around the United States. And one of the statistics that was given some years ago, and I don't know if it's true right now, I'm assuming that it is, they said that only about 50% of the people in the church are even registered, of eligible people to vote are registered to vote. Yeah. And so you would say, if you got a church, and we'll just make it real simple, of 100 people, only, and 100 could be registered to vote, only 50 have registered. And then it says of those 50, only 25 even bothered to go to vote. So only 25% of half the people that are able to vote even bother to vote. And I think in some cases that's being very gracious. Do you have anything new about that?
Gary, that's a good question. I've heard the same figures before. I'm not aware of any recent information. In fact, that number that you just shared, I've not seen any documented survey that indicates that. When you think of documentation, you think of like Barna or Gallup or some kind of research firm like that. But in either case, whatever the number is, we do know that many Christians, Bible-believing Christians of voting age, are not voting. And we do know that there are a number that are not registered. So if there's one thing I could say to that is that, look, brothers and sisters, we are blessed to live in a great nation. We're blessed with freedoms beyond compare. We're the envy of the world where people try to come here. We have brothers and sisters in other parts of the world that are being persecuted for the faith. And here's what I would say to our brethren and sisters here in the Commonwealth and across the country. If you care about the freedoms that you are blessed with, steward your vote. Get registered if you're not registered. Make sure you get out to the polls and vote when the polls are open, and then vote biblical values. And that's part of the work of Commonwealth Policy Center. We're here to help the church understand the issues of the day, to let them know about the candidates on the ballot, and then to connect biblical values with those candidates who best represent them if they're elected.
When I was doing the work with the Family Research Council, I think the data came from Gallup, and that's probably 2012. So it's been quite a long time ago. But as you were speaking, I think you're absolutely right. It's not only showing a great measure of correctness, but it's also showing a large degree of wisdom that the church needs to get out and vote. And immediately I thought of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was aware of the fall of the wall being torn down in Jerusalem. As a matter of fact, his friends came back. He says, "Hey guys, how was the thing back in Jerusalem?" And they said, "Oy vey, you wouldn't believe it. The walls are tumbling down, the gates are still burning." And God convicted him that he had not done his part. And so the story is that he went and he got permission from the king, and he went back and he rebuilt the wall. And I'm saying all that to come to this point is that if we're going to build our nation, and we could say make it great again if we wish, it's going to require more than our just praying about the wall or praying that somebody would magically raise the wall. And I'm not talking about a border or anything right now. I'm talking about the church raising herself up. We have to be engaged in our prayer life, in our worship, but also in our voting as well. And across Kentucky, why does there sometimes, my opinion, why does there seem to be such a malaise about people wanting in the church, from the pulpit or from the pew, being engaged in politics or voting?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I sometimes wonder. And one thing I've learned though, Gary, is to not be too quick to judge, even though that's my personal temptation. Like, y'all don't get it. Why aren't you out there voting, and why don't you care about the issues? But here's what I'm getting to is that sometimes there are just new believers who come in, and they might, have just started following Christ 6 months ago, or less than a year ago, and they don't understand the importance of Christians living out their faith. And they've not made that connection between biblical values and to the political arena. That's one reason. The other reason, too, is that I think that there are many Christians who are disillusioned by the political process. When you take a close look at it, not just the ads, that's part of it, but if you really see what's going on, look under the hood, if you will, and see what's going on, that can be frustrating and off-putting. And there's a lot of Christians who say, I don't want any part in that. My response there is that even though it can be ugly, and even though it can be vicious, and there's stuff that we shouldn't be part of, we still need to steward this opportunity and vote for the best candidate. That we're going to have imperfect people. Look,
Amen.
You've got two, at least on the ballot, you've got at least two people that have feet of clay. They're sinners just like you and me. And we've got to choose that person who's more closely in line with biblical values and constitutional principles, and get behind that person. We will never have a perfect person on the ballot, by the way. It doesn't exist.
That's right.
Jesus is not on the ballot this election cycle. If he was, then I would hope that every Christian would get out and vote for Jesus. But as it is, we've got two sinners that are on the ballot, and that's what we have to work with.
And I'm going to say amen to that. In fact, one of our co-hosts, Tom Fawbush, just came in and has a question I think he wants to ask you as well.
Sure. I just want to handicap this race a little bit more, with the fourth district with Massey. And really it seems like the race is really just a referendum on Massey. Gowrane is, of course, he's handpicked by Trump, but he doesn't seem to be a very dynamic candidate, right? And so he doesn't show up to events. He didn't show up to the debate that you hosted the other day, and
missed all 8 events that he was invited to.
Exactly right. So the question is, there might be a lot of voters that are, disenchanted with Massey, but I think if there was a better candidate, I think Massey would definitely have some trouble right now. But I think if he does pull this out, it's just because of the quality of the candidate. That's just my opinion at this point. But what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, the last poll that I saw showed Massey ahead by a margin of 46% to 40% for Gowrane, and there was a large numbers, over 10% that were undecided. I guess 14% were undecided. I think that this is some people are frustrated with Massey, and how can I put this? Obviously, Donald Trump is. That's why he recruited Ed Gowrane. But there's the political establishment, if you will. Politics as usual in Washington, that group, they're frustrated with him because he is the guy who will vote against any increased spending. He will vote against any more deficit spending. He'll vote against a number of things, the Epstein Transparency Act. That's really gotten the gall of President Trump. I think there's another referendum out here, though, too, and that is, can a U.S. Republican congressman stand up against Donald Trump, the president of the Republican Party, of the nation, but can he stand up to the president and win? And that's why this is receiving international attention. I got a message last night from a Canadian Broadcasting System reporter asking about the race, and she saw the forum I moderated and asked if there's going to be other forums. But this is garnering international attention. The forum I did in Northern Kentucky the other week, we had national reporters there, Wall Street Journal, Politico. I was told that the international correspondents are following these races. I don't know if they're at the event I did. They may have been. But we will see. Does the power of the presidency, can they come down hard to dismantle and dislodge a person like Thomas Massey? Millions are being spent against him. And we'll see if the president wins. And this is, I think, a show of his force and his influence as well.
Well, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice. Stay tuned. We're going to be back with our final segment. Special guest today, Richard Nelson. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to the final segment of Kentucky's Voice. It is a really interesting day. It's really the first day of early voting has opened up today. And I know Richard Nelson, my special guest today, had some information about that he'll share with folks so you can find it. And I always say, too, you can always check with whatever county you live in. Check with your county clerk to find out where the polling places are open so you can go to that. And I also want to make a quick statement, just so everybody's aware. As you all know and that were listening earlier, Thomas Massie was our guest in that first segment. And we have reached out to the Ed Gowrain campaign. One of my cohorts has reached out to him. We haven't heard anything yet, but he would be given the same opportunity to come and state his voice. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but obviously if he does between now and Election Day, we'd be happy to have him on as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very good. Bob, you had mentioned the polling places.
There's a lot of concerns about Massie, and a lot of them are reflected today in a lot of the texts that we've received. We've received probably, I don't know, a dozen or so texts, and they're, and let me share this. I like to ask Richard and Gary this thought, because I'm kind of a Massie skeptic, but I'd be fine if he'd win, if he won. I think he's a likable person. He's someone that's got a good sense of the political game. He's just, but I think here, because I want to give a voice for our listeners who are skeptical of Massie, and I think it's like the narrative would go this way. We're at an existential moment in this country. There was in 2016 there was an article written called the Flight 93 election, which basically meant that nothing else matters except for getting Trump in and getting the agenda passed, because the country's about to fall, and people really feel that way even still to this day. The agenda hasn't been implemented. And so to see anybody that stands up against the agenda when that agenda is really, like the last hope we feel like we have is just kind of rubs everybody wrong. And I think that's an accurate feeling for folks that are skeptical of Massie. And so though he's a great person and he's got a very articulate way of speaking and he's very likable, and when he's behind an issue that you're behind, he's the best. He's really good at it. And so, but there's just some issues that he's been against Trump on, and it's a little different than just being against a presidential initiative, say 20, 30 years ago. That, like I said, we're at this existential moment where things seem like we're on the edge, and so it's all hands on deck. And so I don't know, people just feel that way. So how would you all respond to that?
Yeah. You bring up a point. Donald Trump has a very strong following, and I think the reason why he got elected both times was because of some existential threats to the country, whether it was the southern border, whether it was the gender ideology to kids and in boys and the girls bathroom in our public schools. There is a very clear contrast between the Republican presidential candidate and the Democratic candidates when it comes to really important issues. And when you have a congressman in the same party as the president standing against that, I think a lot of people view that as a betrayal. A lot of people, I think, are frustrated with that. And I think, Tom, if you dial in and look at what Thomas Massie is specifically objecting to, it's about the same as he's done before. When I asked him in the forum about the budget, the balanced budget, one of the things I brought up was that the federal debt was a fraction of what it is today. He's been in office for, I want to say, about 14 years. Is it 7 terms?
That's
but
correct.
the federal debt was maybe 12 to 14 trillion. Now we're at $40 trillion. And it continues to grow while he's been there, but he has consistently voted against deficit spending. He's voted against foreign aid while our own house isn't in order. Massie one of the current debates is over the Epstein Transparency Act. Well, this was something most Republicans were in favor of until President Trump said, no, I don't want to push this. So if you look at issue by issue, Tom, I think you'll see Massie's been the same person he has been going back to when he first ran for office. Smaller government, less taxes, cut the deficit spending, transparency in Congress. He doesn't think that congressmen or women should benefit from any insider type training. This is something that's going on. A lot of people get elected to Congress and they have so much on their balance sheet. 10 years later, they retire and they're multimillionaires in many cases. He's the guy that speaks against this kind of thing. And that's why Thomas Massie still has a strong following. He's the same guy today as he was 14 years ago when he first got in there. So, Tom, it'll be interesting to see how he fares, to see who comes out ahead. I agree that Gowring has been a very not a great candidate. He is not showing up at events. He's avoiding interviews. There was something I saw just within the last couple hours at another a small group meeting where Gowring spoke to, and he got confrontational with one of the people that asked him, hey, why aren't you debating? Why aren't you showing up at these events? And Gowring was visibly agitated and said, well, I'm debating Massie right now in the room. He said this a couple times. I'm debating him right now in the room. Well, he wasn't, because Thomas Massie was not in the room. And these are the kind of things I think that will sway the election in favor of Thomas Massie. When you don't show up, if you're not going to the debates, if you're getting agitated over tough questions. Hey, this is a Republican primary. Wait till you get into a general election and then wait until you get to Congress, because if you're not going to talk to people in your own party right now and make a case for what you believe and why you believe it and what you do if you got into Congress, if you think this is tough, just wait further down the line.
Yeah. Richard, I think that's excellent summation on the whole thing, and I agree with you. I don't have anything to object to that. I'm one that I've known Thomas since before he was even first elected. And what I've seen in him is consistency. And he will remain consistent. And he remains consistent to constitutional values and what we as Christians would say biblical values. He's been very strong on spending too much money. And he and I were talking one time about why does it seem like people are so against him when he takes a stand against, and they'll nitpick and say, well, he doesn't want to support the military. Well, that's because they're trying to cram through this big budget that covers, we're going to make sure that the earthworm over in some far corner of the world, or we're going to teach the Rainbow Coalition information, whatever. They cram all this stuff together, and then they put a little amount of money to the military. He said, wait a minute, we shouldn't be spending money to all of that. And I've got to say, the only time this is going to change, and I'm a supporter of the Convention of States, is that we have a Convention of States to push for things like a balanced budget, term limits, securing the border. And Mark Meckler, who leads that great organization, is doing a fantastic job. And so those are some things that will come down the line. I hate to sound pessimistic. I don't know that much will ever change in Congress until we realize that it's a spiritual battle. And I agree with you on this. The church must be much more engaged than she has been.
Well, yeah. Gary, let me ask you this question about spiritual issues. A lot of Christians are very concerned about the state of Israel. There's a lot of Christians that are dispensational, that believe in the, a certain eschatology that where we line up with supporting Israel. And of course, Thomas Massie has had some issues with AIPAC. Now, not to say that you're against some of the policies of AIPAC doesn't mean you're necessarily anti-Israel. So I give you that. But what would you say to Christians that are dealing with that issue? They're trying to say, well, listen, this guy's voting against Israel. What's that about? So how would you respond to that?
Tom, that is a great question to ask. And I wish we would have thought about asking him when he was on the air with us. But I spoke to him personally one time about that very thing, because I had been approached by people with Christians United for Israel, CUFI. And they were saying, why is he so anti-Israel? And the issue and the answer comes down to this: he is not anti-Israel. He supports Israel. But we need to know that a lot of the things that go on in Israel, God would not endorse. God would not approve of. The same way here in the United States, we could borrow from the story of the woman caught in adultery. Well, if you don't have any sin, cast the first stone. I've spoken to him, and he commented to me. He says, I support Israel, but I cannot support all of these other added onto agenda items that continue to raise our budget, and we're not supporting what we need to be supporting here in the United States. Let's get everything down to a single issue vote on a bill, and let's make some changes there.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I think it's important too, and thanks, Gary. I appreciate that. We only have about 2 minutes to go in the program. What are the other big races are you looking at right now, Richard?
Bob, if I could jump in, because I know we're running out of time. Yeah. But one of the things we talked about were, how do you know who's on the ballot? Where do they stand on the issues? One of the things that the Commonwealth Policy Center does is we interview the candidates. We send out questionnaires. We put together what we call candidate comparisons, and you can see who's running for office and where they stand on the issues. And those are on our website right now, CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org. You can also see the Thomas Massie Forum that I moderated, along with several other forums. I moderated the 6th Congressional District Forum, and then a number of state house and local races as well. A lot of good resources there. If you don't know who's on the ballot or where they stand, go to CommonwealthPolicyCenter.org, and you can find that information there.
Yeah, real quick, again, about 1:20 to go in the program. What's your thoughts about the other races and the outcomes of that specifically? And I'm talking about the Senate.
Cameron Barr.
The Cameron Barr race, obviously, is the biggie. And then the race going on over in the 6th District, which I know you did moderate over there.
I did. Yeah. So it looks like Andy Barr is pulling ahead with Donald Trump's last-minute endorsement, and then also the endorsement. Nate Morris, another top candidate there, dropped out and then endorsed Andy Barr as well. It looks like Andy Barr's pulling away. I did interview Daniel Cameron just the other day. That's a forum that's on our website. But we'll see. We've been surprised before in elections, but if I were to make a prediction, it looks like Andy Barr is ahead there. In the 6th Congressional District, that's Andy Barr's seat that he's vacating. That's between Ryan Dotson and Ralph Alvarado. It looks like Ralph Alvarado may be pulling away in that race as well. So we'll see.
Well, fantastic information. I want to thank everybody who was on the program today. Thank you, Richard Nelson and Tom, for joining us as well.
And thanks, Thomas
This
Massey.
is Kentucky's Voice. We are your voice. At least we like to think we are. Join us tomorrow, same time, same place. Take care.
All right.